Rain fell in thin, relentless sheets, drumming against the roof of the Cole residence. Inside, the argument had reached its breaking point. Lena's voice, sharp and trembling, cut through the storm. "You can't keep controlling everything, Ethan. I'm done living like this." Ethan's reply was quieter, almost pleading. "You don't mean that. You just need to calm down." But she did mean it. Every word. The tension between them had been growing for months. Financial strain, whispered accusations, and a silence that hung heavier than any fight. Tonight, it snapped. Lena grabbed her keys, tears streaking her face as she pushed past him. "Don't follow me," she warned, slamming the door behind her. Ethan stood frozen, the echo of the door slamming ringing in his ears. Outside, headlights flashed briefly as her car pulled away down the soaked driveway, disappearing into the darkness. For the first time in years, the house was utterly silent. He sank onto the couch, shaking. His hands were clammy, his heart pounding too fast. In the reflection of the living room window, he saw his own pale face staring back. Something inside him whispered that this fight would be the last. Hours passed. Midnight crept by. The storm raged harder. When Ethan called her phone, it went straight to voicemail. He left a message, his voice cracking just enough to sound concerned. "Lena, please call me back. I'm worried about you." By dawn, fear turned into opportunity. At 6:17 a.m., the phone call to 911 came in. His tone was panicked but steady, too steady. "My wife never came home last night," he told the dispatcher. "She was upset. She just drove off. I don't know where she is." Within an hour, flashing red and blue lights painted the driveway. Neighbors peered through curtains as officers questioned Ethan on the porch. He wore the same clothes from the night before, his hair unkempt. His eye is red, but not from crying. Detective Clara Jennings arrived mid-morning, coffee in one hand, notebook in the other. She'd seen husbands like him before, polished, polite, always saying the right thing. Ethan claimed Lena had been depressed lately. He even suggested she might have run away. "Did she take anything with her?" Clara asked. He hesitated just long enough. "Just her car, I think." By noon, search teams combed the roads leading out of town. Lena's silver sedan was found parked near Miller's Lake, a secluded area bordered by woods. Her phone sat on the passenger seat, the screen cracked. One of her shoes lay in the mud a few feet away. Ethan arrived at the scene and played his part flawlessly. He shouted her name until his voice broke. Cameras captured his grief, the trembling of his hands, the way he looked toward the water as if expecting her to rise from it. That night, as investigators taped off the area, Clara watched him from a distance. Something in his stillness unsettled her. Not grief, control. Back home, Ethan sat alone in the dark. Rainwater dripped from his coat, pooling on the floor. On the kitchen counter lay Lena's wedding ring, the one he swore she never took off. He picked it up, thumb brushing over the engraved date, and closed his eyes. Outside, thunder rolled again. He whispered into the emptiness, "You shouldn't have made me do it." Then he turned off the lights. When morning came, the town of Cedar Hollow woke to headlines, "Wife missing after marital dispute." Police promised an ongoing investigation. Clara vowed not to let the case fade into another cold file. And Ethan, calm, methodical Ethan, looked out his window as reporters gathered on the street, his face the perfect picture of sorrow. But deep down, beneath the layers of performance and panic, he knew the truth. The morning after the disappearance, Cedar Hollow buzzed with whispers. News vans lined the street, and every channel replayed Ethan Cole's trembling plea for information. "If anyone has seen my wife, please help me bring her home." His voice cracked perfectly on cue. To the world, he was the picture of heartbreak. To himself, he was the architect of the perfect lie. He had spent years crafting that image, the devoted husband, the community volunteer, the man who loved too much. Even now, sitting across from Detective Clara Jennings in the small interview room, he knew how to sell it. She wasn't herself lately, he told her, eyes fixed on the table. She talked about needing space, maybe leaving town for a while. Clara studied him. And you believed her? He looked up, letting just enough pain leak through. I didn't want to, but I couldn't stop her. His words landed like stones, measured, heavy, believable. But when he left the station, the mask slipped for the first time. He walked past the police tape near Miller's Lake, his pulse drumming in his ears. The scene looked almost peaceful now. The calm water, the distant hum of cicadas. Only he knew what the earth beneath that stillness held. That night, in the privacy of his basement, Ethan opened the storage chest he'd kept locked for years. Inside lay reminders of his crime, mud-stained gloves, a torn photograph of Lena smiling beside the lake, and the shovel handle splintered from impact. His hands trembled as he touched them. He'd buried her on the outskirts of the woods, 3 miles past Miller's Lake, beneath a patch of wild roses she'd once admired. He told himself it was poetic justice. She wanted to leave him, but now she'd never leave at all. Yet the guilt refused to stay buried. It crept into his dreams, whispering through the darkness in her voice. You said you loved me, Ethan. Was this Loden? V! He woke in cold sweat, gasping for air. Beside the bed, the glow of a camera light blinked. He'd been recording himself, his alibi, his proof of grief. In every frame, he looked convincingly broken. The media devoured it. Neighbors brought food, prayers, sympathy. Even Clara began to question herself. Maybe Lena truly had run away. Maybe Ethan's tears weren't as false as they seemed. But beneath the surface, cracks formed. A fragment of Lena's bracelet surfaced near the burial site after heavy rain. A hiker's dog dug near the wild roses, dragging something pale from the soil. A piece of fabric. Ethan arrived before police could connect the dots. He burned the evidence that night, the fire reflecting in his eyes. You're gone, he whispered to the flames. You'll stay gone. He believed it then. Days turned to weeks. The search grew cold. Lena's face faded from TV screens, and Ethan, smart, charming Ethan, walked free. But Clara couldn't let go. She'd seen a flicker in his eyes the day he spoke of Lena, a glint too calm for a grieving man. In her office, she reopened the file and underlined his name twice. You buried something, Ethan, she muttered, and I'm going to dig it up. Outside, the rain began again, tapping softly against her window, just as it had the night Lena vanished. Three months passed, and the bright urgency surrounding Lena Cole's disappearance dimmed to a dull echo. The posters on street lamps curled in the rain, her smiling face fading beneath layers of weather and indifference. People stopped asking questions. The story that once haunted Cedar Hollow had turned into just another ghost of the past. Detective Clara Jennings, however, couldn't let it go. Every morning, before the precinct filled with chatter, she opened Lena's file. It was always there, on top of the stack, the photo clipped to the first page. Lena in a summer dress, sunlight in her hair, eyes that seemed to hold both warmth and warning. Clara traced the edges of that photograph with her thumb, replaying the timeline again and again. No body, no witnesses, no credit card activity, no proof Ethan Cole had done anything wrong, just a gut feeling she couldn't shake. She had interviewed him 4 times. Each session was the same: polite, sorrowful, patient. He never contradicted himself, never slipped, never let his mask crack. But his eyes, steady, unblinking, were too calm, too practiced. Still, without evidence, her hands were tied. By autumn, the department moved the file to the inactive drawer. Clara protested, but her captain's voice was final. "Jennings, the husband checks out. You need to let this one rest." She didn't. That winter, she drove out to Miller's Lake one last time. The water had frozen over, the trees bare and skeletal. Snow blanketed the spot where Lena's car had been found. The silence was suffocating. Clara walked to the water's edge, staring at her own reflection in the thin ice. "Where did you go, Lena?" she whispered. "Or who put you there?" Behind her, the wind moved through the trees like a sigh. Miles away, Ethan stood before a mirror of his own. He had grown thinner since the search ended, but his life was returning to normal, or, at least, the version of normal he could live with. He sold the house, moved 2 towns over, started working at a real estate firm where no one knew his name. But sometimes, he still felt the weight of her eyes on him. In quiet moments, he'd catch the faintest scent of her perfume, or see the glint of her wedding ring in dreams that refused to fade. He told himself it was guilt. He told himself it would pass. Years slipped by. Clara rose through the ranks, earning a reputation for her persistence. Yet every time she packed up old cases, her gaze lingered on Lena's. Something about it felt unfinished, like the truth was still out there, buried but breathing. One night, nearly a decade later, she found herself at her desk long after midnight. Rain pattered softly against the windows, and thunder rumbled in the distance. On impulse, she reopened Lena's file. The dates, the phone records, the timeline. Something new clicked, a gap she hadn't noticed before. Clara's pen froze above her notepad. Somewhere far away, Ethan stirred in his sleep, heart pounding for reasons he couldn't name. Outside his window, a single flash of lightning illuminated the empty street. Tomorrow would mark 10 years since Lena disappeared. And for the first time in a decade, something was coming back. Was "10 years is a long time to keep a secret. Long enough for faces to fade, for guilt to settle like dust in the corners of a life rebuilt. But not long enough for Ethan Cole to forget." He lived now under a different name, Ethan Ward, in a modest house on the edge of a small coastal town. To his neighbors, he was quiet, polite, unremarkable. He attended Sunday markets, jogged by the cliffs, and smiled just enough to be forgettable. No one asked about his past. No one noticed how he flinched at the sight of lilies, or how he avoided the word missing. Lena's memory had become both ghost and anchor, something he could never outrun. Sometimes he caught her in fragments, the soft echo of laughter in an empty room, the faint scent of her perfume in his car, the sound of her footsteps when the house should have been still. The dreams were worse. In them, she stood at the edge of Miller's Lake, pale and dripping, eyes dark as the water that swallowed her. She never spoke, just stared, accusingly. Every time he woke, his chest ached as though she had reached through the dream and pressed her cold hand against his heart. By morning, he would wash his face, fix his tie, and pretend he was fine. Then Mara came along. She was warmth where Lena had been storm. A woman who laughed easily, who believed in second chances. She worked at the same real estate firm, drawn to Ethan's quiet nature and his apparent sensitivity. Within months, she moved in. For a while, it almost felt like peace. They built a careful rhythm, shared breakfasts, evening walks, laughter that echoed through the rooms. Ethan began to believe the past had finally loosened its grip. But ghosts have impeccable timing. It began with small things. A faint knock on the door in the middle of the night. 3 taps, slow and deliberate. When he opened it, no one was there. The next morning, muddy footprints marked the porch steps. A scent, Lena's perfume, lingered in the hallway. He told himself it was imagination, stress, guilt resurfacing. But then came the text message. Unknown number. You buried me where the roses grow. Ethan froze, the phone slipping from his hand. No one could know that detail. He deleted the message instantly, but his pulse wouldn't slow. Over the following days, things escalated. A bouquet of wild roses appeared on the doorstep. A figure lingered near the tree line when he drove home at dusk. Mara mentioned once that she thought she saw a woman watching their house from across the street. Ethan brushed it off, but his composure cracked in private. He began sleeping with the lights on, checking locks twice, replaying every possible explanation in his mind. Blackmail, coincidence, madness. On the 10th anniversary of Lena's disappearance, he woke to find something new on his doorstep. A single muddy shoe, the same brand Lena used to wear. His hands shook as he held it. Rain began to fall, faint but steady, just like the night she vanished. Mara noticed his pallor. Ethan, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. He forced a smile. Just tired, he murmured, slipping the shoe into a trash bag when she turned away. That night, as the storm built outside, he sat alone in the living room, every light on, staring at the door. At precisely 10:03 p.m., the doorbell rang. Once, twice, then silence. His breath hitched. Slowly, he rose and turned the handle. And there she was, Lena, pale, soaked, trembling, but alive. Hello, Ethan, she whispered. Did you miss me? The world fell away. For a full 10 seconds, Ethan didn't move. The rain thundered behind her, wind whipping her soaked hair across her face. She looked thinner, paler, older, but it was Lena. Her eyes were the same gray he remembered, sharp and impossible to read. He blinked, half expecting the vision to vanish, but she didn't. She stepped forward, water pooling around her bare feet, and whispered again, It's really me. The sound of her voice broke something inside him. Ethan stumbled back. You can't be here. His voice cracked. You're dead. Lena's lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. You thought I was. Mara appeared in the hallway, her robe loosely tied, confusion creasing her face. Ethan? Who? She stopped when she saw Lena, her expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief. Oh my God. Is that... Ethan's voice cut through her shock. Go upstairs, Mara. But now! The sharpness in his tone startled her. Mara hesitated, eyes flicking between the two women before turning and hurrying up the stairs. Silence settled, heavy and wet, broken only by the ticking of the clock and the rain drumming against the glass. Lena stepped further inside. Her clothes clung to her, mud streaked across her sleeves. I see you've moved on, she said softly, glancing at the photos on the wall, Ethan and Mara at the beach, smiling. You didn't waste much time. Ethan shut the door slowly, every muscle trembling. Where have you been? Everywhere, she replied. Nowhere. Her eyes drifted toward him. You left me there, Ethan, but I didn't die. He felt his stomach turn. That's not possible. Oh, it's possible, she said. You hit me, I fell. I remember the dirt, the dark. But when I woke up, I crawled out. You thought you buried me, but you only buried the part of me that loved you. Ethan's breath hitched. Lena, Don't, she interrupted. You rehearsed that lie long and... Enough. I watched you cry on TV, saw your interviews. You were convincing. Her voice trembled with fury. Almost made me believe you missed me. He rubbed his temples, pacing. If you're alive, why now? Why come back after all this time? Her gaze darkened. Because you need to remember what you did. She moved toward him. He backed away, heart pounding. Stay away from me, Lena. Or what? She challenged. You'll finish what you started? He flinched. She smiled, satisfied. For the next few minutes, neither spoke. The air between them thickened with all the years of silence and the unspoken truths buried beneath it. Finally, Ethan whispered, What do you want from me? Her answer came cold and clear. The truth. A flash of lightning illuminated her face, pale, resolute, haunted. Lena took a step closer, lowering her voice. You'll tell me what really happened that night, Ethan. Every detail. Because I remember pieces, but not everything. And until I know, you don't get to sleep peacefully. He stared at her, breath shallow. You're not here for answers. You're here to destroy me. She tilted her head. Maybe those are the same thing. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Mara's shadow appeared at the top of the stairs, listening. Lena's eyes darted upward, then back to him. Your new girlfriend doesn't deserve this. Not yet. Ethan swallowed hard. You're not staying here. Lena turned toward the door, but paused. I'm not here to stay, Ethan. I'm here to make you remember. With that, she stepped back into the rain, leaving muddy footprints across the polished floor. The front door clicked shut. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the trail she'd left behind. Proof she was real. Proof his nightmare had stepped into daylight. Ethan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, Lena, standing in the doorway, rain dripping from her hair, whispering his name like a curse. He sat in the dim glow of the living room lamp until dawn, staring at the muddy footprints she'd left behind. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. At sunrise, Mara descended the stairs, her face pale. Ethan, what's going on? Who was that woman last night? He hesitated. Someone I used to know. Mara frowned. She called you Ethan Cole. The lie he'd lived for 10 years cracked under the weight of her voice. He turned away. It's complicated. No, Mara said, trembling. It's not. You lied to me. You have another name, another life. He exhaled slowly. It's not what you think. But it was exactly what she thought. Within hours, she packed a bag and left, her car disappearing down the road, leaving Ethan alone again, just as he had been the night Lena vanished. By mid-morning, he was sitting in his car outside the police station, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at him to drive away. But something stronger, fear, guilt, or perhaps a desperate need to reclaim control, pushed him inside. Detective Clara Jennings, now a senior investigator, looked up from her desk when he walked in. Her eyes widened slightly. Well, that's a face I didn't expect to see again. Ethan forced a shaky smile. You're still here. I don't leave unfinished business, she said. And you, Mr. Cole, are the definition of unfinished. He sat down across from her. You're not going to believe me, but Lena's alive. Clara leaned back in her chair, expression unreadable. Alive? She showed up at my house last night. She spoke to me. She looked exactly the same. Clara's pen paused mid-air. You're saying your dead wife just appeared after 10 years? Yes, I don't know how. I thought I killed her, but... He stopped himself too late. Clara's eyes sharpened. You thought you killed her? Ethan's face went pale. I thought she was dead. Everyone did. The detective's instincts flared. Tell me everything. He recounted fragments of the night she disappeared, careful edits, selective truths. But even as he spoke, he saw doubt flicker in Clara's eyes. When he finished, she scribbled something on a pad and stood. I'll look into it, she said. But if you're lying again, Ethan, I'll bury you myself. Outside, the world felt heavier. Ethan drove aimlessly, unable to escape the pull of old memories. Every street, every sound, seemed to whisper her name. That evening, as the sun bled orange across the sky, news broke that stunned the town. Lena Cole had been found alive. She had come forward herself, claiming she'd been living under a false identity in another state. The headlines spread like wildfire. The wife who came back from the dead. Reporters swarmed his property again, just like they had 10 years ago. Clara arranged to meet Lena privately. When she entered the interview room, Lena sat perfectly still, eyes hollow but composed. Where have you been all this time? Clara asked. Lena's voice was calm, deliberate. I ran. I had to. He tried to kill me, Detective. I buried that night for 10 years. Clara studied her face. There were scars along her wrist, faint but real. Her story seemed impossible, yet her pain felt genuine. Outside the window, Ethan watched from his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Lena was alive, and she was turning the world against him. Detective Clara Jennings couldn't shake the feeling that something about Lena Cole's return didn't add up. Her story, 10 years in hiding after surviving her husband's attack, fit together too neatly, like a script rehearsed one too many times. The next morning, Clara revisited the old evidence box. Dust coated its edges, the label, Cole, Lena. Missing person faded from sunlight and neglect. Inside, she found photos, witness statements, and a small leather-bound notebook sealed in plastic. It was Lena's journal. Clara sat at her desk and carefully flipped it open. The handwriting was delicate, looping, yet filled with unease. The early pages spoke of love, Ethan's charm, their dream home by the lake, plans for a family. But as the entries darkened, a different man emerged, controlling, jealous, and quietly cruel. He checks my phone every night. He says love means knowing where I am at all times. Sometimes I think he loves the idea of me more than me. The last entry was dated 2 days before her disappearance. He knows I want to leave. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. I need to find a way out before he takes everything from me. Clara leaned back, heart pounding. The entry could easily be seen as a warning, even evidence, but one line, written faintly at the bottom, caught her attention. Maybe the only way to be free is to disappear. She reread it 3 times. Could Lena have planned her own vanishing? If so, how did it turn into an attempted murder? Clara's mind raced. What if both of them were lying? That evening, she arranged to meet Lena again under the guise of a follow-up interview. The woman who arrived looked weary but controlled, dressed simply, eyes cold as steel. "Detective," Lena greeted, sitting down. "You wanted to talk about that night?" Clara nodded. "You said Ethan attacked you, but your journal suggests something is that you were planning to run away." Lena's jaw tightened. "I thought about it, yes, but he found out before I could." Clara studied her. "And you're certain he buried you?" Lena's eyes flickered. "Certain enough to wake up in the dirt." The detective's pen hovered above the page. Something in Lena's tone, half anger, half satisfaction, unsettled her. After Lena left, Clara reopened the journal, flipping to the very back. One page was torn out, cleanly, deliberately. The missing page might have been written the night she vanished. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his darkened living room, the television flashing with news segments about Lena's miraculous return. His reflection stared back at him from the screen, broken, cornered, unraveling. He poured a drink, hands shaking. "She's not back for justice," he whispered. "She's back for revenge." On the table beside him lay an envelope that had arrived earlier that day. No return address, only his name written in Lena's handwriting. Inside was a photocopy of one journal entry circled in red ink. "He'll never let me go alive, so I'll make sure he never lives free." The glass slipped from his hand, shattering across the floor. Outside, thunder rumbled again, the same sound that had marked every major moment of his downfall. And somewhere across town, Clara stared at the missing journal page number, 74, realizing that Lena's truth was still incomplete. Detective Clara Jennings couldn't shake the number written in red ink. 74. The missing page from Lena's journal wasn't just a coincidence. It was a message, one she was certain Ethan had received too. Whatever had happened 10 years ago, Lena wanted him to remember. Clara reopened the old case files that night, her desk buried beneath photographs, police reports, and coroner notes. Except, there had never been a body. The case had hinged on circumstantial evidence, Ethan's shaky testimony, and blood traces that matched Lena's DNA. But the coroner's report had always bothered her. Volume insufficient for fatality. The words echoed now. Had Lena staged her death and Ethan helped cover it up, willingly or not? Meanwhile, Ethan sat in the dark, the photocopied journal page still on the table, that single red circle burning into his mind. Every sound outside made him flinch. For 10 years he'd lived with guilt, nightmares, and the weight of her ghost. But if Lena was alive, she wasn't the victim anymore. She was something else. He drove to the lake that night, the same lake where police had found her car submerged a decade ago. The trees stood twisted and black against the moonlight, the air thick with damp earth. He stared at the rippling water, remembering how he'd dug a shallow grave behind the cabin, panicked, drunk, convinced she was dead. Except, when he returned the next morning, the body was gone. He'd told no one that part. Ethan dropped to his knees near the same spot, running his fingers over the soil. The ground had shifted over time, but the faint outline of the past still lingered, and as his hand brushed away leaves, he found something, metallic, rusted, and half-buried. A locket. Lena's locket. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a faded photo, Lena smiling, and a folded scrap of paper wedged behind it. You buried the wrong woman. Ethan stumbled backward, his breath catching in his throat. His flashlight flickered, and for a moment he swore he saw a figure standing at the edge of the woods, still, silent, watching. He shouted her name. Lena? No response. Just the wind and the water whispering secrets only the dead should know. Back at the station, Clara got a call from the forensic lab. Detective, we analyzed the old samples you sent. There's something you need to see. She drove through the rain, heart pounding. The technician met her with a file in hand. The blood from the crime scene? It's Lena's, but there's a secondary profile mixed in. A woman's DNA, not Lena's. Clara froze. Another woman? The tech nodded. It was never tested before. The system just matched it to a Jane Doe found weeks after Lena's disappearance. Clara's mind raced. A body had been buried. Just not Lena's. Meanwhile, Ethan sped away from the lake, the locket clutched in his fist. He didn't see the car following him, headlights dimmed, keeping distance. From behind the wheel, Lena's reflection caught in the mirror. Her lips curved into a faint, cold smile. You should have left me buried, Ethan. The rain fell harder, drumming against the windshield like the heartbeat of the past resurfacing. At the same time, Clara pinned new photos on her investigation board, the Jane Doe's image beside Lena's missing poster. The resemblance was uncanny. Same build, same hair color, a perfect stand-in. She stepped back, whispering to herself, someone helped her disappear. Outside, thunder cracked once again, echoing through the night as if digging up ghosts long meant to stay hidden. Tomorrow, Clara knew, she would confront Lena, and this time, no one would be walking away unburied. The rain hadn't stopped since midnight. It lashed against the windows of the Cole residence, turning the night into a trembling blur of thunder and lightning. Inside, Ethan paced the floor, clutching the locket like a curse he couldn't throw away. Every flash of lightning reminded him of that night 10 years ago, her scream, the shovel, the silence that followed. He hadn't slept since finding the message at the lake. You buried the wrong woman. The words looped endlessly in his mind. Whoever Lena was now, whatever she had become, she wanted him to remember, to suffer. When the knock came at the door, it wasn't a surprise. It was almost expected. He froze, breath uneven, and slowly turned the handle. Lena stood there, soaked to the bone, rain dripping from her hair, her eyes sharp and unrecognizable. She looked like a ghost that had decided to come back and haunt the living. Can I come in? Her voice was calm, steady, controlled. Ethan stepped aside. You're already here. he muttered. The silence between them was heavy, suffocating. She glanced around, the same furniture, the same photographs, untouched by time. "You kept everything," she said softly. "Like I never left." "You never did leave," he replied, bitterness breaking through. "You're in this house, this air, my damn head." She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Good. You should remember what you did." Ethan's voice cracked. "What I did? You think I planned to kill you? You think I meant for any of it to happen?" Lena took a step closer, her wet shoes squeaking on the hardwood. "You hit me. You dragged me outside. You buried me, Ethan. You made me disappear." His hands trembled. "You were gone. You weren't breathing. You didn't even check," she snapped, tears mixing with rain. "You buried me like garbage." He flinched, voice softening. "I thought I was burying my mistake, but you—" "What? Are you now, Lena? Alive? Dead? What do you want from me?" Her gaze darkened. "The truth. I want you to tell me why." Ethan's throat tightened. "Because I was scared you'd leave. Because I couldn't stand the thought of you walking away with someone else. You were all I had." The confession hung in the air like smoke. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lena reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was yellowed, fragile, the missing page 74 from her journal. She placed it on the table between them. "You didn't just kill the wrong woman," she whispered. "You buried her. My sister." Ethan's blood ran cold. What are you talking about?" Lena's voice hardened. "She came that night. She wanted to help me escape. You were drunk. You didn't even see who you hit. I found her body the next morning, in the same place you left it." Ethan's knees buckled. No, that's not possible." "Oh, it's possible," Lena said, eyes glinting with fury and grief. "You destroyed both our lives, and now you're going to make it right." At that moment, red and blue lights flickered through the rain-soaked windows. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Ethan's eyes darted toward the sound. "What did you do?" he whispered. Lena's voice was barely audible. "I told them the truth. Every word you just said. Recorded." As the sirens stopped outside and the pounding on the door began, Ethan sank to the floor, realization washing over him like ice. Lena turned away, her expression unreadable. "You wanted me to stay forever," she said quietly. "Now I will." The door burst open, officers shouting his name. Outside, the rain eased into a soft drizzle, as if the storm had finally gotten what it came for. Detective Clara Jennings stood outside the interrogation room, watching Ethan Cole through the glass. His hands were cuffed, his eyes hollow. He hadn't spoken since the arrest, only staring at the floor, muttering fragments of words. Wrong woman. Sister. Grave. Lena sat in a separate room across the hall, arms folded, expression calm. But Clara could sense the exhaustion behind that stillness, the weight of 10 years of secrets pressing against her ribs. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world unnaturally quiet. Clara turned to the forensic specialist beside her. "You ran the DNA?" He nodded, handing her the folder. The samples from the grave site matched the Jane Doe found 10 years ago. But here's the thing. There's a familial connection to Lena Cole. The remains belong to a woman named Mara Weston. Clara's brow furrowed. Her maiden name was Weston. Exactly, the specialist said. Mara was her younger sister. Clara's heart sank. The puzzle finally fit, but in the cruelest way imaginable. Mara hadn't just been a casualty. She was the one Ethan buried, thinking she was Lena. Inside the interrogation room, Ethan looked up as Clara entered. His voice was rough. "She set me up." Clara sat down opposite him. "No, Ethan. You set yourself up. You hit her sister that night, not her. The DNA confirms it." He shook his head violently. "No, I saw her face. I remember the scream." "You were drunk," Clara interrupted softly. "You buried a woman you thought was your wife. And when you sobered up, you never checked." Ethan's breathing quickened. She could have told me. She could have stopped all this. Clara studied him carefully. "She did. But not to free you. To make you remember what you'd done." Meanwhile, Lena sat in silence as Clara entered the adjoining room. "We got the results," Clara said quietly. "It's her, isn't it?" Lena nodded once, eyes glassy. "Mara tried to help me leave. She wore my jacket that night. Ethan followed her thinking it was me." Clara's voice softened. "You could have come forward." "I tried," Lena whispered. "But when I saw what he'd done, when I saw her in that grave, I wanted him to feel the same hell I did." Clara hesitated. "And now?" Lena exhaled shakily. "Now I just want her to rest." The detective closed her notebook. "The truth will do that." Outside, Ethan was led away in handcuffs, his face pale, hollowed out by realization. For years he had buried guilt, never knowing whose ghost haunted him. Lena watched from the window, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. Clara stood beside her. "This doesn't feel like justice, does it?" Lena shook her head. "Justice doesn't bring the dead back." As the police car pulled away, the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, cold, gray, and final. Clara turned to her, voice low. "There's one more thing we need to confirm. The DNA shows another match. Someone else was there that night." Lena's eyes widened. "Who?" Clara looked down at the report. "Someone who helped you vanish." The words, "someone helped you vanish," echoed in Lena's mind long after Detective Clara Jennings left the room. The statement tore open something she thought was long dead. Another secret, buried even deeper than the grave Ethan had dug 10 years ago. By morning, Clara was back at the forensics lab, the report spread open beneath harsh fluorescent lights. A partial DNA match had surfaced, linked not to Lena or Ethan, but to a third person. The system identified him as Dr. Samuel Vance, a retired coroner who had signed off on Lena's original death certificate. Clara's pulse quickened. "He was the one who declared her dead," she murmured. "And now his DNA shows up in the same grave." She drove to the outskirts of town, where Vance lived in quiet isolation. His house sat behind an overgrown hedge, its windows coated in dust, as if time had stopped the day Lena vanished. When he opened the door, His frail face twisted into unease at the sight of her badge. "Detective Jennings," he said, voice trembling. "I knew this day would come." Inside, Clara found the walls lined with old case files and newspaper clippings, Lena's face among them. "You falsified a report," she said. "You signed off a body you knew wasn't hers." He sank into a chair, exhaling shakily. "She came to me that night, alive, terrified. She said her husband tried to kill her, that her sister was missing. I couldn't let her go back." "So you helped her disappear," Clara said flatly. He nodded. "We staged it. I filed the report, said the remains were Lena's, but I didn't know the body was her sister's. When I realized the truth, it was too late." Clara's voice was cold. "You buried the truth for her." "I did," he admitted, "but some truths don't stay buried." Meanwhile, Lena sat alone in the motel room Clara had arranged for her. The television played muted news footage of Ethan's arrest, his pale face splashed across every screen. She should have felt closure, maybe even victory. Instead, she felt nothing but hollow silence. She reached into her bag and pulled out the same journal that had started it all. Page 74, the missing page, was still folded in her coat pocket. She unfolded it slowly, her sister's handwriting filling the lines. "If you make it out, don't come back for me, just live. One of us has to." Lena pressed the page to her chest, tears slipping down her face. Mara had saved her life and lost her own, and Lena had spent a decade letting that guilt rot her soul. The door opened softly. Clara stepped in, holding a thin file. "Lena, there's something you should see." She laid out a photograph, an old one. It showed Mara and Lena standing with Dr. Vance outside his clinic, taken months before her disappearance. "He wasn't just a coroner," Clara said quietly. "He knew your family. He'd been treating your sister for months before the incident. She trusted him." Lena's eyes widened. "He said he was helping me, not her." "He helped both of you," Clara replied, "until one of you ended up in the ground." Lena closed her eyes, her voice breaking. "He buried her, and I buried the truth." Clara nodded gently. "And now, it's time to exhume it." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara and Lena stood side by side at the reopened grave. The air was heavy, still. The excavation lights cast long shadows across the soil. For the first time in 10 years, Lena whispered her sister's name aloud. Mara. The wind carried it softly across the field, like an apology finally spoken. As the earth gave up its final secret, Clara turned to her. "You were never the ghost in this story," she said. "You were the survivor." But Lena's tearful eyes told another truth, one that would haunt her forever. Because sometimes survival isn't freedom, it's the prison you build yourself. It had been 6 months since the grave was reopened. The headlines had faded, the investigation closed, and the town of Graybridge slipped back into its uneasy quiet. Yet for Lena Cole, peace never came. She had moved to a small coastal town 2 hours away. New name, new home, new life.